Hello, Gene Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog. I think I better start today's vlog with my disclaimer. Sometimes I forget, but I usually try to let everybody know I'm a conservative. Always keep that in mind when you evaluate whatever I say, because I'm going to start out with an opinion today, which is that with this administration, the Biden administration, or maybe it's the Biden staff administration or the Biden's handlers administration, who knows, or maybe it's really the Bernie Sanders administration. But we'll go with the official title, Biden administration. And regarding the Biden administration, I have trouble deciding from day to day which is worse, their foreign policy or their domestic policy. Today we'll be talking about foreign policy, specifically. Well, I was going to say the Middle East, but it's actually more than the Middle East. It's more relations between Israel and the Muslim world. You'll see why in a second. Let me give you this headline, and this is all going to be a prelude to me just talking about how badly the Biden administration is screwing up foreign policy, at least regarding the Middle East and Israel and, well, pretty much everything. When you think of China, just about everything, but we're going to stick with the Middle East today. So here is this headline. Senior advisor to Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan secretly visited Israel, met with Mossad chief. Mossad is the Israeli equivalent to the CIA, except the Mossad seems to be better as far as tracking down people they want to get or just spying. I find it hard to imagine us secretly getting tons of secret nuclear documents out of the middle of Tehran. Maybe we could do it. I don't recall us doing anything on that level. And when I say the Mossad, when I compliment them, I really just mean the Middle East. I don't know if they do anything around the rest of the world. Reason I mention it, well, let me quote from the article here, and I link to the entire article in the description if you want to read it. Syed Zulfikar Bukhari, senior advisor to Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan, secretly visited Israel and met with the then chief of the Mossad, Yossi Cohen, last November. A source in Islamabad, that's the capital of Pakistan, in case you don't know, said that Bukhari met with a number of senior Israeli officials during a brief visit to Israel in November and conveyed a message from the Pakistani Chief of Staff, Qamar Javed Bajwa. I'm taking a guess at the pronunciation. The two countries are expected to participate in a joint naval exercise in the Black Sea, reported Israel Hayom. That means Israel Today. It's Hebrew for Israel Today. That's an Israeli newspaper. Dean Samuel Elmis, writing in Israel Hayom, said that Bukhari, taking advantage of his British passport, arrived at Ben Gurion Airport from Islamabad on a connecting flight to London. Upon landing, he was transferred to Tel Aviv, where he met with senior officials of Israel's foreign ministry and conveyed the message sent by Prime Minister Khan. He also met with former Mossad chief Yossi Cohen, to whom he conveyed a message from Pakistani Chief of Staff Qamar Javed Bajwa. The visit and the contacts come after heavy pressure from the UAE, United Arab Emirates. This is revealed and validated against the background of the participation of the two countries in a joint naval exercise together with the U.S. Navy in the Black Sea, reported Israel Hayom. Quote, Pakistan is one of the countries participating in the Sea Breeze exercise, and the Pakistani military attaché in Ukraine will come as an observer, unquote, the Pakistan Navy said. Israel will take part in the international exercise alongside Muslim countries, including Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Pakistan, Morocco, Tunisia, and Turkey, reported Israel Hayom. So let me dissect that for you, but first I have to give you another side to this story, and then I'll explain. Because I always say, wait for the facts, and if there are contrary facts, or at least an allegation of contrary facts, I want to share them. So here is this headline from Israel Hayom. It's a later story, not the one I just quoted, but Pakistani official denies visiting Israel. But look at the last paragraph, and I linked to this one too. The Pakistani denial reflects how deeply Pakistan opposes any contact with Israel, despite various reports. This is the important part. Despite various reports about direct and indirect secret outreach between the country's leaders. First of all, let me just correct. You're looking right now at a picture of Bukhari. This headline. The story before, that was Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan. So now I want to put those two together, focusing on that last paragraph first. The denial, it's a public denial because this could have been a leaked report. I want to be fair, this could be accurate that he did not visit Israel, but I've seen a couple of articles on this citing Pakistani sources and Israeli sources, but you have to keep in mind that, well, I mentioned in this, or this article mentioned the United Arab Emirates. They made peace with Israel now. They have very open relations with Israel. But there were secret talks before that, before the Egyptian and Jordanian peace treaties with Israel. There were behind the scenes or under the table secret talks. And they have credibly been reported, the Israelis have met with Saudi Arabians, with the Saudis, including the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. So you see, that's why I am giving some credibility to this report. That's one reason, because this has happened before, and I read an article some time ago. It was a quote, it was a translation from the Arabic of a Pakistani cleric. I don't know if it was an imam or not, high religious official, but it was a Pakistani cleric calling for open relations between Pakistan and Israel. So it is very possible that there were these secret talks, but publicly, because of the reaction of the quote-unquote Muslim street to contacts with Israel, that they would publicly deny it. But it doesn't mean that these talks aren't going on. So I wanted to give you both sides. My personal opinion, which could be wrong, is that they are talking to them, that they have been talking to them, that Pakistan would, because there are so many benefits to having peace with Israel, not the least of which is their technology, and also because Israel has great relations with India. So if I were Pakistan, I would want to have great relations too. I would want Israel to have great relations with both sides. I would not want to leave everything to or all the benefits to India. So I am attaching some credibility to this report that they are talking, and also because of this naval exercise, because I just mentioned that Israel will take part in the international exercise alongside Muslim countries, including Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Pakistan, Morocco, Tunisia, and Turkey. Turkey has always been at peace with Israel. There's an Islamist, anti-Semitic leader right now, Erdogan of Turkey, but they still officially have relations. But again, keep in mind that Pakistan is participating in this exercise, albeit with a number of other Muslim countries, but one of the countries participating is Israel. That's another reason for me to consider the report of the contacts to be credible. Now this brings us to the main story and the screw-up of this administration, the Biden administration, not the Imran Khan Pakistani administration, in case there's any confusion there. So here's the headline: Lapid, Biden administration tying Israel-Arab normalization to Palestinians. I linked to this also. Let me just give you a short excerpt. Foreign Minister Yair Lapid. Yair Lapid, there was just an election in Israel. He's a new foreign minister, but there is a rotation agreement with Naftali Bennett, the current prime minister, that will make Lapid the prime minister in 2 years. They will switch places, or at least I'm assuming that Bennett becomes the foreign minister. They just switch places, but definitely, I could be wrong, but Lapid definitely will be the prime minister, so that makes this extra important. But Foreign Minister Yair Lapid officially dedicated the Israeli embassy in the United Arab Emirates and met with the Gulf states' foreign minister Abdullah bin Zayed on Tuesday during the historic first visit by an Israeli minister to the UAE, United Arab Emirates, since it established diplomatic relations with Israel last year. The Biden administration is, quote, positive and excited, unquote, about ties between Israel and the UAE and the prospect of Israel establishing diplomatic relations with more Arab countries. That's good so far, Lapid said in a briefing with reporters accompanying him to Abu Dhabi. That's the capital of the Emirates. However, 2 days after meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Rome, Lapid said Washington, quote, says that normalizations require us to make an effort with the Palestinians, unquote, contrary to the Trump administration. The administration that, after all these failures of multiple administrations, got foreign policy right, at least in the Middle East. Lapid said Washington, quote, says that normalizations require us to make an effort with the Palestinians, unquote, contrary to the Trump administration, which, quote, gave a sense that the Abraham Accords, instead of progress on the Palestinian front, were a way to prove it's unnecessary. Lapid was skeptical about the chances of an agreement with the Palestinians, which is a skepticism we should all have, but apparently not the Biden administration. Quote, the Palestinians have to want progress themselves for someone to be able to help them, and that's not the situation now in the Palestinian Authority or Hamas. Don't shoot 4,000 rockets at Israelis if you want to get help, unquote, Lapid said regarding reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. Because that's another problem. The Biden administration is all for resuming aid, sending aid to the Gazans to, quote unquote, rebuild, though of course everybody knows that it's an open secret that Hamas will divert the foreign aid to rebuild their tunnels, to build more rockets. It will just go for military purposes. But the main point is the Abraham Accords. That's these new agreements that Trump, or to give special credit, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, worked out with the United Arab Emirates, Sudan, other countries. That is the way to go. Make peace with all these other countries, leave the Palestinians to stew in their own juices till they understand that they have lost, because they still think they can win. Their goal is to destroy Israel and create a Palestinian state between the river and the sea. That's their term, the river, Jordan River, Mediterranean Sea. They are still on that, but the Biden administration, they are right back. And you have to remember, there's an old interview with John Kerry saying that there is no way there would be peace in the Middle East without settling the Palestinian issue. As Lapid said, as Trump proved, that's not true.
Let me tell you a few things that I've learned for sure in the last few years. There will be no separate peace between Israel and the Arab world. I want to make that very clear to all of you. I've heard several prominent politicians in Israel sometimes saying, well, the Arab world's in a different place now. We just have to reach out to them and we can work some things with the Arab world and we'll deal with the Palestinians. No, 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 and no. I can tell you that, reaffirmed even in the last week as I have talked to leaders of the Arab community. There will be no advance and separate peace with the Arab world without the Palestinian process and Palestinian peace. Everybody needs to understand that. That is a hard reality.
Peace is possible without the Palestinians. The Palestinians, there used to be something called the quote-unquote Palestinian veto, where the Arab countries would not deal with Israel or try to make peace with Israel until peace had been made with the Palestinians. Trump cut the Gordian knot, threw that conventional wisdom out the window, or defenestrated that conventional wisdom, if you want some highfalutin, grammar language. But he proved that that is not true, that peace is possible without the Palestinians, so leave the Palestinians alone and pursue peace with all these other countries. And it's funny that the Biden administration, according to this article, is, quote, positive and excited, unquote, about ties between Israel and the UAE and the prospect of Israel establishing diplomatic relations with more Arab countries, Lapid said in a briefing with reporters accompanying him to Abu Dhabi, where in a historic event he's opening the foreign embassy, the Israeli embassy in the United Arab Emirates. But then next paragraph, or 2 days at another time, they said it depends on the Palestinians. But I have to ask, what has the Biden administration been doing to build on the Abraham Accords? Apparently, if you take their word, which I take only with a giant grain of salt, that they are enthusiastic about additional peace agreements between Israel and other Arab countries, other Muslim countries. What are they doing? Where are the meetings? Where's the Secretary of State going to these countries and engaging in shuttle diplomacy or any kind of diplomacy to make these peace agreements happen? They're not. What are they doing? They're trying to rehabilitate the Palestinians and make them the fulcrum, the center of the whole matter again after Trump had successfully pursued peace without them. That's what this administration should be doing. They are not doing it. That's a prime example of how terrible they are on foreign policy, how terrible how wrong, how ignorant their worldview is. They are apparently ignorant of everything that happens. And on top of that, they want to resume aid to the Palestinians despite the Taylor Force Act. The Taylor Force Act is named after Taylor Force, who was killed, an American citizen killed in Israel by a Palestinian terrorist. The Taylor Force Act says that we cannot give aid to the Palestinians as long as they are doing what they are doing, which is to pay salaries to terrorists. If you are a terrorist, if you kill a Jew, you go to prison in Israel and you get a salary. That's if you're not killed. If you're killed, then your family gets a salary, a very generous salary from the Palestinian Authority. Congress passed a law. Trump signed it. I think it was Trump who signed it. It could have been Obama. But it's the law. We cannot give aid to the Palestinians as long as they are engaging in this, what's called pay for slay policy, paying salaries to terrorists who kill, in this case, an American citizen. We're not talking about killing Israelis. We're talking about killing American citizens. So again, this is going to be a very hard, 3.5 more years dealing with during this administration, and not just for us, but for the rest of the world. The only thing I could think of that could be worse is Biden's dementia advancing to the point where the media can no longer deny it. The 25th Amendment is invoked, or by some other means that he resigns or whatever. Kamala Harris becomes president. I mean, oh my God, you see how bad the foreign policy is now. Not to mention immigration. But I'll just leave it there for today. As always, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate the time that you spend with me. If you could spend a little more time, I would appreciate a thumbs up if you like this vlog. Share it with anybody you think would also like it. Got any comments? Comment section below the screen where you can, in the comments section, it's a comment section, so it's for comments, right? But you can also put questions, suggestions for future topics. You can visit my other channels, my music channel, original music, my hot dog recipe channel. You could subscribe. I love getting new subscribers, but most of all, come back and see me again. I would love to see all of you again. I look forward to seeing all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.